What's up, everybody? Tom Fazio here. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, welcome back. If you're not, today I'm going to be looking at a Law of the Die from book Law of the Die. Now these laws, as I mentioned in some of the other videos, for me they stand outside of the narrative, right? This fictional narrative, or two in one, if you will, two key stories and protagonists, drawn together through happenstance. But the laws themselves came out of other experiences I've had in the past, and in a way I wrote this book to create a little bit of context for the laws, so they stand alone, and that's what I want to share with you. So I'm going to get into this one. Law of the Die. This is from chapter A Record of Deceit. Law of the Die. Those who aim to mitigate risk are far better served by forethought and ready alternatives than by discovering themselves at the discretion of sinister forces and asking, now what? Transcend the constraints of a volatile world by designing a new one, with new options and opportunities, which inoculates you against forces beyond your control. So this is the first law that comes up in part 3 of the book, and part 3 of the book is about momentum. 3 parts. The first one, uncertainty. Second part, optionality. Third part, momentum. And this is the idea that through a little bit of tinkering and maturing within the practice of trialing new options, rolling the dice, trialing options in life, that we actually get much better at doing that, and along the way start to be able to, this practice enters the realm of lifestyle design or life design. And momentum is just that, right? It's this idea that we're no longer just dabbling, we're actually starting to generate a tailwind toward certain outcomes. And so I'm going to break this down. Those who aim to mitigate risk are far better served by forethought and ready alternatives than by discovering themselves at the discretion of sinister forces and asking, now what? Okay, that sentence I think is relatively easy to understand, which is that we've all been in that situation where we've got hit by life shit, and we don't know what to do. We don't seem to have any other options in the moment. And this could be a breakup with somebody you love. It could be the loss of a job. It could be, an opportunity that fell through your fingers without you knowing how or why. We've all experienced this. And this is raising the question that, well, did it have to be that way? And if not, what could we do differently for the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, that might inoculate us against similar misfortunes? Yeah, so to make it super obvious, you're not going to be as bothered if your house gets hit by a tornado if you own 3 houses. Now, we obviously can't all go out and get 3 houses like that, but it's a simple premise, right? You're not going to be as devastated by a breakup if you have other people that you think are interesting potential, suitors or partners. Same thing with a job. You get fired from your job. It's not going to hurt nearly as much if you've got, 5 or 10 other people knocking on your door with good offers. So the question is, how do we generate more offers? Not how do we feel better or just implement positivity to make it through these hard times. It's a different perspective. Transcend the constraints of a volatile world by designing a new one with new options and opportunities, which inoculates you against forces beyond your control. Right, so that hits home on the same point. And this is essentially a reframe. Rather than, there's a lot of people today that like to focus on positivity, positive psychology, maybe even manifesting new realities to a certain extent. And I would reduce a lot of that practice to wishful thinking, and not necessarily a strategy, right? The strategy in these cases is hope. It's not actually something that can be practiced, refined, not something that you can get better at. A science of sorts. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, rolling the dice is a science. But it's the idea that we can transcend the constraints of what we're experiencing, right? In everything that we choose to do, there are going to be certain types of constraints and limitations. And the fewer options that we have, the more fallout from those things hurts. All of us can relate to this. And there is no amount of just positive self-talk or personal affirmations that really move the needle externally, right? They can affect our psychology and they might give us the motivation to take another step forward, and that's great. But what's the new strategy? Is the new strategy still hope? Or are we now starting to tick the boxes and say, okay, I don't have the answers, but I can tinker my way through this. I can trial things, and I don't have to be married or committed to each one of these things. They're not so complicated that I can't implement them or activate them relatively quickly. They don't cost me very much. And now I can start to test new directions and new options, right? And the more that we do that as a side, as a side bet, side hustle, just putting a little bit of time into these things, well, eventually it might start to inoculate us from our core direction, our primary direction. Now, this does assume fallibility, right? It assumes that we don't know everything, that everything that we would like to happen may not happen, and that even the good things that we have in life right now may not be permanent. So it's an interesting perspective shift that whether or not we take on, I don't think it's easy to discard. I think we have to consider this because there is real risk and real fallout by just doing the same things, right? A lot of us like to feel a sense of security and not branch out too much. How did that work for people in 2008 with the financial crisis? How did that work in 2020 with COVID, right? I mean, the more that we bank on certain types of outcomes, and if they don't happen or come true, what is security today? We don't know, right? There's nothing that is truly secure. It's just an illusion. So to a certain degree, yeah, it's uncomfortable, and yeah, there's risk involved with trialing and tinkering, rolling the dice toward new options, but where's the greatest risk? I would argue the greatest risk is a risk of fallout when we've got no alternatives. But that's my 2 cents. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please drop a comment in the comments section if you have any. Yeah, let me know if this kind of thing is your jam and we can do more. And if you're interested in the whole book, link in the description. And until next time, guys, be weightless.